history of Black Twitter and how the Black community on Twitter changed the face of the platform. And I really loved that piece. I loved honestly how it like kind of captured the magic, how it felt like Black Twitter set the agenda for pop culture conversations, how it helped memes kind of become a new digital language. And I think most importantly, Black Twitter just also knew exactly how to use that platform and the way that platform is set up to just push for equality and justice. That Wired article inspired this brand new docuseries. It's called Black Twitter, A People's History. Take a listen to this.
I do know one thing, is that when Black Twitter showed up, it was at the most important time.
We can kiki all we want, but when you're Black, you can't avoid the realities of this world.
It's way bigger than just fun and jokes.
That's just a little bit of a taste from the new docuseries. To chat about the magic of Black Twitter and the movement, Marlon Palmer is here. Cyrus Marcus Ware is here. Cyrus, Marlon, welcome to the show, everybody. How we feeling?
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, my pleasure. Cyrus, I'm going to start with you. When did you discover or realize, hey, Black Twitter is a thing. I want to be a part of this thing?
Absolutely. I was totally swept up with the food ratings, the comments about food seasoning. That was something that really first caught my attention with Black Twitter, was watching these people sort of react to food being prepared and talking about the way that we season our food and the deliciousness of our food.
That was your entry point?
First, that food that wasn't seasoned. Yeah, that was my entry point. And then I had my co-parent was really into watching like award shows. So the Oscars were really big in our house. So Oscars So White, that also was something that really hooked me into Black Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Marlon, you're perhaps too frequent a character on Black Twitter.
Am I?
So, some people might say, not me. I would have more Marlon. But how about you? When did you get sort of started or involved in Black Twitter as a construct, do you think?
Yeah, I think I recognized it was a thing. Literally, there was a hashtag. This is when hashtags were a thing.
Yeah.
And there's a hashtag that said Black Twitter verification. So it was like different Black things that only Black people would know that would verify you on Twitter as being okay to be on Black Twitter. So there was that. And then obviously, you know, a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement, Trayvon, that was a huge moment as well. So those different little moments definitely all together showed me that what was going on.
The thing that you just expressed there is the range, right? The range of conversations, because we go from food ratings to, you know, Trayvon Martin being killed, and then suddenly the energy on Black Twitter is very focused, very activist, very specific in terms of like, hey, these are the changes that the Black activists on Twitter are sort of pushing for. I want to come back to that in a moment, but maybe Cyrus, you can talk a little bit about how you think Black Twitter sets itself apart from other online communities, because there are so many other online communities, but Black Twitter sort of had a distinctive feel to it.
I think there was something about the immediacy of it. You could tweet something out and it could reach, you know, literally millions of people very, very quickly. Yeah. And it was so culturally specific. I mean, Marlon's already mentioned, you know, sort of the references. You would get this. I think about the, you know, your Black when hashtag that was really, you know, trending, that was really big on Black Twitter. It was this very culturally specific movement building, because we've mentioned some of the incredible movement building that came out of Black Twitter, like, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement that really grew out of that. So we'll come back to that. But, you know, this was a space that was this cultural space, this creative space. It was so funny. And look, Black Twitter is a thing. People have written their PhD dissertation on Black Twitter. There are literally PhD dissertations on Black Twitter. I don't know about that in other online spaces. This was a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah. Marlon, like there is, because I guess like when people think about Twitter, they go like, well, how different could it be? Because I understand the mechanics of Twitter. You post a thing, you repost a thing. But there are like literally just different ways of interacting with the platform, different ways of like everybody responds and quote tweets everything. And everyone is supposed to like know what you're talking about, because Black Twitter is kind of like locked into a single or a couple of conversations a day kind of thing. So like, how do you think that etiquette and that formality, if you will, kind of ended up forming, do you think?
I think it developed over time. I think people understood that there were unspoken rules about how you engage on Twitter, and especially just seeing if you try to divert and go to a different topic that you just felt like talking about when everybody's focused on this one thing, you're seeing no one's even interacting with you. So I got to join in, because if I want to be a part of the conversation, then I have to join with whatever today's or this week's topic is. So I think it's a lot of that. Plus, when we talk about Twitter, you're talking about a lot of people who throughout their childhood went unheard. Let's be very real. We want to get our thoughts out.
Sure.
And who's more unheard than Black people? That's why we have so much to say on the platform and we share so much, because we want to relate. We want to find people who share our experiences.
Yeah. I love the idea of like a joke that feels disembodied to people if you're not a part of like a Black Twitter community, because people will just tweet the thing completely out of context. But if you know, then absolutely you know. I want to talk a little bit about how this space was really funny, Marlon, like way funnier than people give it credit for. Do you want to talk a little bit about like some of your most memorable hashtags or viral moments?
Some of my memorable viral moments. I feel like anytime, like Sarah said, an award show's on, I feel like those are like the greatest. Like when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock.
That was a moment on Black Twitter.
Yes, it was a moment.
Yeah, you had
Black
to be there.
Twitter.
Yes.
All of Twitter was joining in, but specifically Black Twitter, if you were in that community at that time, the jokes were flying. And I feel like the best times to be a part of Black Twitter are when the world is in the worst place. When we heard there might be nukes being sent off and world war, the jokes were flying. Because it's like the only way we know how to cope is with the laughter and with the funny. So I think ironically, the brightest times are the darkest moments.
Because I was going to say, like, the thing that I think about, Cyrus, when I think about Black Twitter is intimacy. There's a real intimacy to the way that you sort of, end up sharing that space, if you will. And that intimacy is like the intimacy of Black people gathered in a room, kind of perfectly translated onto the digital world, if you will.
It feels so like we're kikiing, and that's what was so true about Black Twitter was that it really felt like we were just hanging on the stoop, after the party, cutting up and talking about what we had just seen or what we had just experienced in the day. It really did have this feeling like we were gabbing with some close friends, not talking to a million strangers on the internet, but rather we were like in a community. And I think that was something that was so beautiful about Black Twitter, which continues, because Black Twitter continues, even though, the platform is in a different place.
So let's get a little bit into the activism, because I think that's such a significant part of the legacy of Black Twitter, because the platform, fosters this free expression, dialogue, humor, but it also played this pivotal role in one of the biggest moments in history, right? Like Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement. How do you think, this changed activism on a grand scale, the way that we saw Black Twitter coalesce around a single idea, do you think?
I've been an activist for 27 years, and one of the hardest things is trying to get people out. How do you get a message to a broad array of people, the actions on this day at this particular time? It's really hard to do. And Black Twitter was this way of saying unequivocally, our lives are inherently valuable, Black Lives Matter, spreading that message really, really broadly, and then mobilizing people. It was a mobilizing tool that I think we hadn't really seen. I mean, we had phone trees in the 90s, we had posters in the early 2000s, but Black Twitter was a way of getting a message really quickly. I think about things like the Hoodies Up after the George Zimmerman verdict, and people tweeting Hoodies Up. And we organized an event in Toronto around Hoodies Up that was quickly mobilized. And I think about when things go wrong in activism. I think about when the police attacked the BLMTO Tent City occupation on the first night, and people very quickly tweeted about it. And within about 11 seconds, the entire city knew that the police were attacking the encampment, and people came down. So it was this way of mobilizing people that we hadn't really seen before. It was quick. It was very, very easy to reach a large group of people, and it was a way of getting people activated, wanting to move. It was like catalytic. It wanted people to engage with what they were reading. That's the thing about Black Twitter. This was not a passive engagement. We were really engaged in these topics, whether it was humor or direct action. We were really engaged.
Catalytic is such a great word to use, because when I think about Black Twitter, Cyrus, what I do think of is the way that it managed to force certain conversations on the broader culture that the broader culture didn't want to have. And so, Black Lives Matter being a very good example of this. But also, like, when we sort of think about like all the consternation around like the word woke, listen, the word woke migrated, certainly existed before the internet, but the way that it sort of migrated to the culture at large, and how like there's so much like fighting over a concept like woke is like Black Twitter brought that word to the internet and then sort of forced people to engage with the idea of like, what does it mean to be engaged in social justice? What does it mean to be quote unquote woke? Like that is one of the legacies of Black Twitter, is like it's still able to kind of force people to deal with a conversation that if they could, they would put off. Is that your read as well, Cyrus?
I would absolutely say that it made us think, what would it look like if the world was different? You know, it made us want to imagine, like wokeness, this idea that we should be alert to the dangers that we're facing Black life. I mean, we were watching Black Twitter unfold at a time when there was unprecedented police killings of Black people. We were seeing it literally on Twitter every single day. And the summer of 2016, the summer of 2020, just really intense. It galvanized people and said, yeah, like, absolutely, we want to be engaged in this. We want to be awake to the dangers that are facing us. It's so funny, you know, we have Childish Gambino, you know, singing songs, stay woke. I can't sing, but anyways, you know, really embracing this idea that being awake to racial injustice was an important and beautiful quality of a functioning society. And it's so strange that now woke has become this slur, you know, because of course, being awake to racial injustice is something we should all want to be able to be alert to.
Marlon, we should say the vibes have changed. Elon Musk now owns the platform. The energy, I think, is a little bit different. What was your reaction to the sale of, like, suddenly Elon Musk owns Twitter, he changes the name to X, and as far as I can tell, you know, Black Twitter and members of Black Twitter are still like, no, like, you're not going to change the nature of our interaction. Sorry, we're still out here.
You can call it X. They can call it what is it, Rogers Center? They can call it Scotiabank Carnival. The names are the names. It's Sky Dome, it's Caravana, and it's Twitter. It's just not going to change, and that's just what it is. Yeah. I wasn't really, like, swayed by him taking over. I'm like, okay, another white guy that owns it. Really, is not going to make much of a difference. But what I did see was a lot more bots, a lot more quote unquote free speech,
more trolls, right? Like, I mean, like, there are more trolls on Twitter than there used to be. Yeah.
But I think that was a natural progression. I think we were going there anyways, Elon or not. I just feel like that's the way. But like Cyrus talking about the woke and how it turned into a slur, I feel like there are a group of people who are absolutely not trying to engage in any of that talk, want all the distractions possible, and would do anything, regardless of who's running the platform, to derail the conversation. So I'm the only thing I'm happy Elon did is get money in my bank account. Jack wasn't doing that. So.
Or you're like, I guess for that, I got to say thank you, Elon. Cyrus, we should talk, though, about the fact that, like, the trolls do change the safety of existing on Twitter, right? Like, they do change, like, the idea that there are more racist trolls, the idea there's more transphobic trolls on a space like Twitter, which kind of, like, at least felt like you could find your people and be close to your people and, like, generally be undisturbed or uninterrupted. I think that does change your relationship to I guess, like, how you engage on the platform. But given the persistence and the still existence of Black Twitter, what do you think that says about the safety of the community on a platform like Twitter?
What I loved about Black Twitter was that as a Black trans person, I never felt like the joke was about me. You know, and it happens way too often that the joke is about the trans person. And that wasn't the case with Black Twitter. It was a place where I could come and be part of the joke and laugh along with and be part of this community. And what we've seen since Elon Musk bought X or Twitter, I'll dead name Twitter, only in this one case will I dead name. But, you know, he did it because he was so mad that his daughter was trans and he wanted to crack down on trans people and try to dissuade trans people from engaging in the platform. So there's absolutely a lot more transphobia, a lot more homophobia, and a lot of white supremacy, which, you know, quite frankly, was already there's a hotbed of white supremacy, you know, here across Turtle Island. There's a lot of work that we have to do around racial injustice, but we saw it so visibly after he took over. What did he do? He walked in with a kitchen sink. You know, I thought he was so big man coming in with a kitchen sink and dropping it down, and everyone just kind of rolled their eyes. But yeah, the violence that I've seen on Twitter has made it a lot less safe. And so I don't check out Twitter. I'm so thankful for other opportunities like Black Twitter. Black people are resilient. We are that rose coming up through the concrete crack. There is a Black Twitter presence on Instagram. There's a Black Twitter presence on Blue Sky. There's a Black Twitter presence on all these other platforms that aren't even Twitter because we can't be stopped. And so I'm looking for my Black Twitter fix in places that aren't as imbued with that kind of violence as I'm seeing right now on X. It's a really dreadful kind of hellscape now because you might, you know, have a funny joke that you're laughing at, and then some white supremacist comes in and says something that just kind of derails your whole day. So why would I put myself through that?
That's fair. And the answer is you would not. Marlon, 30 seconds to you. What is the legacy of Black Twitter, do you think?
The legacy of Black Twitter is seen through, I think, commerce. More importantly, like when you look at the biggest brands on Twitter, in terms of like big brand companies, they're all speaking Black Twitter language. You know what I mean?
Yes,
you had
they are.
Wendy's, you
Yes, they
had Hamburger Helper put out a mixtape, a rap mixtape. Like these things are all driven by the Black dollar, and they recognize how impactful Twitter is to the Black dollar. Like if there can be a drink that somebody says, yo, this drink was the one. It goes viral, and now people are taking pictures like, yo, I'm having a drink, I'm trying it out. And that can blow up. Look at the Popeyes chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
That was all Black Twitter.
Black Twitter
you know what
creation.
I mean? Just creating a myth. And so I think our legacy is literally just driving the platform in whatever direction we feel like it needs to go.
From the funny to the commercial to the activist, I just appreciate you guys being here. Just take this moment to celebrate everything that Black Twitter gave us. Marlon Palmer, Cyrus Marcus Ware, I appreciate your time. Thanks for being here, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having us.
My pleasure. Cyrus Marcus Ware is a visual artist, activist, and assistant professor at McMaster University. Marlon Palmer is a comedian, podcaster, and hosts the morning show on Flow 98.7 in Toronto. Black Twitter, A People's History, is out on Hulu in the United States. You can't watch it in Canada yet, but can I just tell you, you gotta go read the article that inspired the show. You can find that on Wired.com. I'm Al-Amin Abdul-Mahmoud. This is Commotion. We've spent so much time on the show talking about TikTok. So much of what you might find on the app is just fun. Like that's kind of largely the point of the app. But we also know that social media is associated with anxiety, with depression, with all kinds of mental health struggles, especially for young people. And then enter therapy talk. There's a wide range, I would say, from licensed therapists to people who call themselves coaches, quote unquote, who are really just influencers. And all of them are offering some kind of mental health advice on the app. And what's wild about it is some are turning being a TikTok therapist into a whole career.
Sugar or caffeine? Which one disturbs your sleep the most? I'm a psychologist. I put both to the test and I was shocked by the results.
That is just one example from a therapist who has more than 4.7 million followers. Janelle Peters is a psychotherapist. She's here to talk about TikTok therapy. Janelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm happy that you're here. Listen, I think I did my best to explain what TikTok therapy is, but maybe you want to give better examples on what people might see or hear if they search, for therapy on TikTok.
You're hearing digestible content. Like, somebody goes, read a help book or go read this about anxiety and depression. You look at the book, you're like, really? I'm going to read 200 pages right now? Not going to happen. I'd rather go scroll and somebody makes it fun and entertaining and interesting and related to me, right? And so I always think of it as like a storybook for adults.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Because I keep looking at it and be like, I don't know how to make sense of this. Listen, if you're watching this content, from your perspective, how might people actually benefit from this kind of content, from therapy content on TikTok, do you think?
I feel like the best way to benefit from it is, one, making sure that you are getting the information from like a licensed professional. Like you said it before, there's coaches or people who are just influencers who are just like, I have anxiety too, right? But the benefit of it is you get to learn something about yourself and understand something about yourself, and usually a format that you're like, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. That's why I do this with so-and-so, or, I'm not the only one. Cause we all go to the comments, you look at the comments and you're like, I'm not the only one. There's like 3,000 other people here saying the exact same thing. So I think it brings connection. Like that's a huge benefit.
So like, do you see a downside? Do you see a downside in terms of people, opening TikTok and then going, what is wrong with me? And using that to sort of figure that out.
100%. Okay, we heard the whole like gaslighting, the whole like, you're manipulating me, or you're bombing, this. And we started love bombing. We started having all these words and they're like, that's my new trigger word, right? And I get it. Like these things are real, but then we're not always using them in the right context. And so it's, the hard part is that people generalize a lot of the stuff that are there, and therapy is a unique process. Like anybody that's gone into that space knows that it is different for everybody that's there. You can go on TikTok and be like, oh, that sounds like me. Let me now go and explore it properly
with a trained professional.
With someone, with a trained professional, right?
Yeah.
But there are people out here who are using it as therapy. TikTok is not therapy. It's a connection. It's learning. It's absorbing.
So listen, this is an entertainment show. Like we sort of talk about how arts and entertainment and pop culture sort of structure our lives. And the reason we wanted to get into this conversation is because like I'm seeing therapists with truly astronomical number of followers on the platform. I've watched some of them. They make really heady concepts kind of entertaining and really funny, you know, but is this supposed to be just entertainment, or are people taking it quite seriously, do you think?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think we need the entertainment to catch us as human beings. Like we want something entertaining. We scroll for hours for entertainment. Yeah. And so I think therapists are going into the right platforms and mediums to be like, ooh, well, if I can make, let's talking about anxiety or depression entertaining, why not go here? Like, think about it this way. You're not getting 4 million people walking through your private practice office. You know what I mean?
No.
But you can get 4 million people engaged in wanting to learn something and reducing that stigma of it. So I can see why it has such an uptake. You get to reach so much more people with like your message.
I was going to say, like, to that point, though, that we've seen accounts of therapists who have given up their practice because it's more lucrative for them to do this. And so, like, if from a practitioner's point of view, maybe giving up the idea of like working one-on-one with clients, because actually it's easier to make a 1-minute video and reach 4 million people with it. Like, who wouldn't see the appeal of that, right?
Exactly. I was like, I get it. I get why people are on there pumping up 40 videos a week, right? Because it could make you a lot of money. It could bring across a message, and the world is not cheap. Like we can't afford half the stuff that are out here nowadays. And so people are probably like, if I could do this and not burn myself out, let me maybe go this route. But there's probably burnout in that space too. So I do feel for those people, because that's a lot of work to put out every day.
Listen, there's somebody out there listening to this conversation right now, and they're like, well, I kind of sometimes will look up or spend some time with therapists on TikTok who give me some helpful tips, some helpful ideas. Maybe you want to shed some light on like what to look for to know if the therapist that you're following on TikTok is someone who's trustworthy. Are there any signs that you should look for?
Google's your best friend. Okay. Go look it up and be like, who is this person outside of this 30 seconds that I'm looking at? Like, are they licensed? Are they educated? Because the truth is, those individuals, they're going to give you something that makes you go, aha, that's me. Yeah. But they're also going to redirect you to where you get the true like support, whether that's here's a list of other therapists, here's a website that you can go to, maybe here's my book as a licensed person that I wrote to give you a bit more context. So I think you should always look at the credentials of who you are following. And if you just want to follow an influencer who relates to you, that's just as anxious as you, that's cool too. But don't take the depth of the advice from them.
I guess that's the appeal, right? Is that like with ideas of therapy, like they're not simple ideas. Like you want to sort of, you want somebody who can explain it to you in an entertaining way. But the problem is thinking, oh, that's the whole ball game. It's been explained to me in an entertaining way, and now I've done some therapy, quote unquote.
Exactly. Do you know have you seen the cup that everybody's putting like the coffee under the tap?
No, what is this?
And it's running over. So it's like they take a cup of coffee and they'll put it under a running water sink, and it's going viral. It's like everywhere now. And they're like, this is what healing process looks like. And so many people are like, oh, okay, yeah. The water's turning from like dark, the cup's turning from dark brown to a lighter and lighter version as the water keeps pouring into it. And it's like healing takes time. So now a lot of people are like, oh, I can't just have one therapy session and it fixes everything. Got it.
That's
right.
A useful
so
thing to know.
That message works, right? And so I think it's those people are making it entertaining to be like, go to therapy, stay in it a while. Your cup is eventually going to turn clear.
Janelle, I got to leave it there, but I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Janelle Peters is a psychology coordinator at Pepperdine University. She's also the clinical director at Janelle Peters Psychotherapy. That is it for the podcast today. Listen, my name is Alameen Abdul-Mahmoud. This show is called Commotion. We're going to be back tomorrow. We're going to talk about Apple Music's 100 best albums of all time. Can't wait to get into it. See you tomorrow.